I heard an old saying from Zig Ziglar, who was like known for being one of the greatest salespeople in the world, and I saw him once at the end of his life doing a event, like a Tony Robbins type of event or something, and but I took away something that was really interesting, and you just said it in a different way, but he said, you know, if you chase money, a lot of people chase money, and that's what chasing business is chasing money. It's chasing the goal of having more, right? But if you chase money, you'll never catch it. He said, but if you want abundance and you want opportunity, then what you have is you have to help people, you have to turn a profit, and you have to serve God. And if you do those three things, money, success, relationship success, marriage success, whatever it is that you're aiming for, all of that will come to you because you're doing exactly that. You're planting the seeds, you're serving people, you're serving God, you're building something bigger. You're remembering you got to stay in business, you got to turn a profit. But
Yes.
it was such a powerful thing. And I learning that early on was really, really powerful.
For sure. It's this is my athleadership is my second book. My first book was Brand Me, and I talk about, you know, we are the maker's mark. And like, if we really understand that, that becomes our identity. And I think part of what becomes the challenge, and I work with elite athletes as well, right? We all have identity crisis when what we have performed and done, made money for, and what we were valued for changes. And now you've got to reinvent yourself. Now you're injured. Now you got laid off. Now someone else got the job. Now you're divorced. You know, like all of these identities that come to shape us, but sometimes we define ourselves by them. And so, you know, for me, the grounding in my faith in God has helped me realize my identity is not what I do. It's just an expression, and it may fail, but it's a lesson. It's practice. You know, I will tell you the story that I just thought about recently. One of my first events I did when I first started my business, I was so excited. I was in Atlanta. I was telling you I lived in Atlanta, and I was 24 hours out from that business, from that event launching. And I was in my office, my team was setting up everything, and I got a knock on the door, and I had gotten served papers, cease and desist, that I was trademark infringing on another entrepreneur in the city's business. Now, imagine I'm about to do this event. I get served legal papers 24 hours before I'm supposed to go live with this event. And I'm like, what? And what I had learned in my corporate job was to always protect my IP. So I had done the IP protection. So this was just someone trying to scare me off. But from that example of fear and uncertainty, I didn't stop doing events, but I have always made sure my IP is tight because I had to learn that lesson early on. But it was a moment of high pressure, and it was a moment that I had to say, you know what, how am I going to respond? And so to me, these are the opportunities that we just have in life to become better.
Yeah, to tie some of this together, it's really interesting. Number one, in faith, when you are chosen, and all of us are chosen, if we look at ourselves as God sees us, we're all chosen. So if you're chosen for something greater and you try to attain it, that doesn't mean that it's all going to be roses and sunshine. Being chosen to build something bigger, to serve more people, to be the leader you were meant to be, all of that is defined by a cross to bear, a challenge.
Yes.
And that challenge that you just said is a leadership mindset that you had to frame immediately to say, okay, I just took a punch, and I don't
Mhm.
care how it always feels bad when something like that
Yes.
happens. But you got to know the more successful you become, the more people come after you.
Oh,
And
it's
that's one of those
coming.
things that's just really, really challenging. And
But you framing it, I was literally talking with a friend of mine recently, and she's been with me through my whole from college, and one of those friends that you've had for life. And I was dealing with the challenge. She says, Melissa, it always happens around this time. Like, there's patterns, but it's often right before a breakthrough. You're going to have a challenge. It's just the way it goes, but it's how you respond.
yeah, it's also a great reminder that through conflict, is where success is usually at the other end of that, that challenge, that moment. Like you're in a transformational moment. When you're in transformational moments, you don't often see your body changing. You don't see your wisdom growing. You don't see it as it happens, but then you look back and you're like, "Oh, wow. Look at
Yes.
what happened. Look at how this had to go down for me to get
Yeah.
to this point."
Yes.
And that's one of the hardest parts of leadership. I think the more successful, if you take athletes and you take
Mhm.
those that have been at the highest level, you can. I've always been a Cowboys fan
Oh,
in
not in
football.
our
I know.
house.
Are you a Falcons fan? Are you
No,
Falcons
we're
or
in the DC area,
you're
we're
okay, you're Reds
Commanders.
okay,
Yeah.
Commanders. All right, well, that I said that because it'll add a little flavor to this, but I remember kinda watching, uh, Bledsoe, who was a hero, come into Dallas and then be replaced by Romo, who became, like, the next just great quarterback, and then in an instance, he's replaced by Dak Prescott and Dak comes in, and now Dak just gets beat up. One of the best quarterbacks statistically in the NFL. Now, people can argue whatever they want. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying the man gets torn down incessantly because of his placement, and it's no different than in DC. I mean, the new young quarterback Daniels, amazing young man. I think he's a phenomenal player and exciting to watch. But he's going into year 3. Expectations are high. As the minute they're not, they start getting beat up. But if they're prepared, they've conditioned themselves, like you've said, they have a much better track, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the mindset that keeps coming back. It's the gift that keeps giving. I think the other thing that's important to talk about, Scott, too, is the reason we can reflect is because we have recovery, and athletes do not perform at that high level 90 minutes or forever, right? It's a period of time, and then they take the time to recover. And to me, recovery is so critical to well being because it's not just about like, okay, I need to go to the spa or I need to get extra sleep. It's a time to reflect, to ask myself hard questions, to review the game tape, like what worked well, what didn't, what would I do differently? How do I prepare for my next? What do I need to say no to? What do I need to shift or change? So it's another, again, an operating system. One of the key components is that well-being, and that enables you to have that peak performance. Is you have to have those ebbs and flow.
Yeah, so just to sharpen this point you're making, in an athlete is a great representation for anyone in their lives. And what we know about athletes is they have to have recovery. They do the cold plunge, they get in the sauna, they take care of their body. If you get beat up on a Sunday playing football, Monday, Tuesday is recovery. You do light practice Wednesday, you get back into the heavy and there's a system. If we look at that, I think what you're saying is, if we look at that, we have to remember that we need the recovery in our own lives and our own days. Sometimes our own moments, like coming in from a high intensity day where you're making hard decisions, you're running the boardroom, whatever it may be, and then you have to walk into the door and you got chaos going on in the house. How you recover in those moments, I know
Yes.
I've seen you talk about this, that can
Yes.
be extremely valuable, not only in business, but in your life.
Yes, micro recovery. It could be breath work. It could be taking a moment to step away after an intense meeting and go a walk around the block. It doesn't have to be a vacation. I think sometimes we associate well being with these moments of bliss, but it's literally a daily practice of how do I recover my energy? Am I aware of when my energy is high and when it's low? Am I taking the time to unplug so that I'm not overstimulated? These are just little micro practices that are habits, but it goes back to the operating system. How do I view myself, you know, with that elite performance mindset? That means I need to be able to be at my best. How do I modulate and do that?
As we're talking, what's really interesting is I'm just seeing the correlation in an athlete, a pro athlete. We talked about how practice and conditioning and the mundane, the everyday is what they have to fall in love with. So many of us in life, and I will say that there have been many a times I've struggled with this myself, we have to remind ourselves we got to fall in love with the mundane of the
Yeah.
day-to-day practice of life. You know,
Yes.
every day you get up, every
Mm.
day you might do your hair, I might not. But you might put on makeup, I might
Mhm.
not, but we have a routine. And if we can fall in love with the mundane, with the practice of life, that's the present state. That's the secret. That is
Yeah.
the secret. It allows you to see, the beautiful color of nature. It allows you to hear the birds singing. It allows you to hear the compliment that somebody gives you when you're moving too fast. Like, that's the present state, and what you're talking about is so correlated. What an athlete does to what we do every day is falling in love with that mundane, that practice of life, which is so cool.
Yes. I say leaders aren't born, they're built. And the building is a day-to-day process. And when we can truly embrace it as a gift, I think that's what you're saying. It's a gift. Somebody did not wake up today. Someone did not make it. I had a very good friend of mine who passed away last Sunday, and a year to the date, I was with her at my high school reunion and at a church service for one of our friends. And so it's like when I got up this morning and I was running, I was like, I know this is painful, but this is a gift. Like, I get to be out here. I'm hearing the birds. I'm feeling the sun on my face. I am moving my body. I've been through a lot with my health, so I'm pain free. I had to flip that mindset. I get to, not I have to, not I'm going to endure this. Then we fall in love with the process. We fall in love with life. We see it as a gift.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Perspective is really what you're talking about. And,
Yeah.
I like the fact that you chose to go back to your high school reunion, because I think a lot of people they don't love that part of their life. You know, believe it or not, most people did not have a great experience during the 4 years of high school. It was us growing up, it was figuring it out, and
Awkward.
I feel like I had both. I had, like, the first 2. I went from Catholic school to public school in a new city, in a new place, and my first year and a half, 2 years were extremely tough, and then my last 2 years or so were very easy and maybe a little too much fun. But by the time I got out, I learned things in my life and about myself that I'm very grateful for. And when I go through the motions of remembering perspective, like you just said, you saw a friend who you might not have seen had you not gone, but
That's
you
right.
weren't afraid to hit that head on, to go
Yes.
back, not be worried about where you are right now or what
Yeah.
someone thinks or sees, but you got to at least experience that friendship one more time, which is extremely valuable to me. And I'm very grateful when people make that decision to say, I
Yes.
get to go see those people, because they might not be there the next time you go. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.